Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer. My co-host is Holly Kane, and together we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We're so glad you're here with us. Welcome to episode 38. Today, Holly and I are recording in person because I am actually in Florida visiting Holly. And tomorrow we're heading to a podcasting conference, and it's been so fun to spend some time here together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we do want to warn you, though, if our recording sounds a little bit different or if you hear some background noises, this is why. We're together using one microphone, so if anything happens, we're going to have to just pause or let it be there. So you might hear some coughing or a dog or something like that. And we're hoping all the tech will cooperate, but we can't be 100% sure.
Yeah, we don't have the safety of our mute button because we're
Exactly.
sitting right next to each other. So in the next couple of episodes, we are going to be talking about leadership and business. We really want to help you if you are a business owner, work in a business, or if you may be considering starting your own business. As Christian women, we may have a very different approach to business than some of the standard advice that's out there. So we want to share some perspectives around faith and business as well. Today, I am excited to be interviewing our own resident business expert about her business journey. Esther is a motivated serial entrepreneur and is one of the most self-motivated people I know. So if she wants to do something, she learns all she can about it and does it well. I know you're going to glean lots from all she has to say about her entrepreneurial experiences over the years and all that she has learned from her many years in the business world.
Well, thanks, Holly. Thanks for that amazing intro, and I'm so happy to be getting interviewed on my own podcast.
I know the tables are turned, right? How does that feel?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous.
Okay. Well, you're in good hands, I think. I hope. Okay, we'll start off really easy. What was your first business?
Well, I was trying to think back because as a kid, I did a lot of pretending of being a business person. So I remember with a friend of mine, we would set up an office in her living room and we would have computers and we would have calculators, and we were always doing something with adding up the money and figuring out who was going to do what. But I didn't really have an actual business, I don't think, as a kid. I don't think I actually ever sold things. I do think I had a very detailed notebook of what my parents owed me for chores. So I did have a love for spreadsheets and money early on. Not a love for money, but a love for tracking all of that stuff, which I still enjoy the spreadsheet side of business now. So
do you have a spreadsheet of all the things I owe you?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, good. We try to keep that at a minimum. Okay, so what was your first actual business?
Okay, so out of college, I got married and started my first job in social work, because that was what I went to school for. Mm-hmm. So I was working in the social work field, and my friend, who had previously been my high school cheerleading coach, invited me to a scrapbooking party. And that was maybe within 6 months to a year after I was first married and working in the real world kind of thing. And I went and I fell in love with the products, and I didn't have a lot of extra money. And so I signed up to be a consultant and started doing that as a business. So I was working full time, with my social work job, but then also doing this side hustle of selling scrapbooking supplies.
Yeah. Okay, and where did it go from there? How did you progress in that job?
So I actually really loved that company. I loved the products, and I did that for about 3 years. And I actually started to grow a team and was making, getting some income from it, not a lot. But after about 3 years, I was seeing that it wasn't something that was consistent from month to month for income.
Yeah.
And as much as I loved the products, it was more of a hobby type of business. So
Yep.
it was like something I was doing to sustain the hobby.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I was introduced to a new company, which was a wellness company. And it was actually the same friend who had been doing the scrapbooking business with me that she was introduced to this company as well. And so it was another kind of network marketing company, but a very different approach to the business. And so I actually started working with that company and found that ended up being a lot more profitable. And I was spending less money on all the hobby products that I had previously been buying. So I was keeping more profit, but I was still working full time during that time. And gradually that income grew over the next couple years to the point where I was able to cut back to working part-time in my social work job, which was really kind of fun.
Yeah.
To be able to have that flexibility to say, okay, I'm not going to work full-time out of the house. I'm going to just work part-time. And then I don't know how long it was between then and when I got pregnant, but once Kirsten was born, I was able to cut all the way back to just 2 days a week in my social work job. And that was I'm grateful for that because it was a very flexible schedule on their end. They were super cool about me kind of setting my own hours, and as long as I got the work done, it was good. And then I still had my wellness business on the side that was providing a pretty consistent income at that point.
So it sounds like you had a lot of things to manage there for a little while. You had the side hustle, plus you had Kirsten, plus you had another job. So how did you manage all of that while still trying to learn how to do a business?
I think we covered some of that on our balance episodes.
Oh, okay.
And I would say that there were times that I managed it fairly well and then times that I didn't manage it well at all. But a big thing that I did was a lot of time blocking and scheduling, a lot of the things that I still teach people and do now for myself on a regular basis, because there really wasn't a way for me to manage it without being pretty strict about my time and what I was doing. I would say it was definitely the hardest, like right after Kirsten was born, because I was taking care of an infant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think I put a lot of pressure on myself during that time to still like really push forward with the business, but also raise a child. And so that was definitely a harder period.
Yep.
But I would say it was just an ongoing kind of changing of what my schedule looked like based on the phase of life we were in,
right,
and the phase of business I was in.
Yep. So how long did you do that business for?
So I actually was with that company for almost 10 years. I'm still a customer, so I still love the products, but I'm not doing the business side now. And I got to a point, though, where I realized that as much as I loved the company and the products, I really didn't feel like I was using my gifts and my skills that I wanted to be using. And I also had always been passionate about writing. And so I had started a blog back in 2006, and Holly and I were talking about this yesterday, and I read to her some of my first blog posts, which I don't know that I will share publicly. But I had been writing and always been passionate about writing. I knew writing was something that God had put on my heart, both as a passion and I believe as a skill that I have. And so I had started that blog, but really been very sporadic about it. Yeah. So about the end of 2015, I started to feel that kind of like urging in my spirit to go back to the writing and take it more seriously. And at that time, I was also feeling kind of burnt out from the whole direct sales side of things. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that at that time for me, I was feeling very stressed out by it rather than feeling fulfilled and like I was really using my skills in the way that I could be.
Yeah.
So I kind of just shifted gears and went to saying, I'm going to learn everything I can about online business, about online marketing, about blogging, about growing an email list. And that's what I did. For the next year, I just dove into growing my blog. I created a course. I built an email list. I promoted and I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of blog posts and really saw some fruit from that effort.
Yeah.
But at the end of the following year, so about a year later, I realized, okay, this is really awesome. I love doing this. However, one thing about blogging is if you don't have a huge audience, it's hard to truly generate an ongoing income from the blog. You can't really get advertisers unless you have thousands upon thousands of views.
Right.
And, you have to have a pretty decent audience to even sell your own products or courses as well.
Yeah.
And so I just wasn't at the point where it was bringing in the kind of income that I needed. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we talked about you managing all that stuff, you were also doing the blog at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I had been doing the blog like while doing these direct sales companies, but again, very sporadically and very, very like not actually writing with any kind of purpose or intention.
Okay, yep.
More just writing because I kind of felt like it.
Okay.
And so I would write about, my boss who stole my pizza or things like that. So
I think that's my favorite blog post so far. And that's terrible to say because you have a lot of really good blog posts. But that one was funny. So what happened after that?
Okay, so at the end of 2016, that was when I realized, okay, the blog is really not bringing in income. And so as a family, we were kind of at a point where we realized we either need to have me go get a job or I need to go dive back into that direct sales business that I had been doing before, or I need to find a different way to generate some revenue. And so I started researching and talking to some other online friends and some other business owners. And I realized that a lot of the things that I had learned to do for myself with my own blog and all the social media and all the tech skills that I had, I could actually use those skills as a service for other business owners. And so that's when I decided to start Morningstar Media Services and basically started out as a virtual assistant, which is essentially someone who assists another person virtually. So it covers a virtual assistant can cover a huge range of services, but I did a lot of social media, a lot of graphics, a lot of behind the scenes work on people's websites and building websites and all of those kinds of things. And that started in January of 2017. And so those things that I had learned to do on my own now became a skill that I could use to support my family. And since that time, I have continued that business, but it's evolved over time where I have transitioned from working with just kind of any business owner to getting a little bit more specific about the types of businesses that I wanted to work with and the types of services. And now we've transitioned to primarily focusing on working with podcasters because I love podcasting. I love helping podcasters. And so we focus on managing the behind the scenes stuff for podcasters who also have a business.
Right.
So not just podcasters who like to talk, but actually ones who have a full-fledged business that they're running with their podcast.
So your degree was actually in social work, and what you're doing is so different than that. How did you manage the feelings of like, I'm in over my head, I don't know what I'm doing? Or did you ever feel that way?
Yeah, so I think that it's been such a journey that I definitely have felt that way at times, but I don't feel like I had a huge amount of that because the whole getting to where I'm at now with Morningstar was a very gradual process.
Yeah.
I didn't just go from getting my degree in social work to saying, I'm going to start a business helping podcasters or managing people's social media or helping people create graphics for their website or whatever. I, learned those skills over time. I invested a lot in listening to podcasts, reading blogs, taking courses, watching free webinars, and then buying courses that would help me to learn and grow with those skills. And then I would just do it. I would do it for myself
Yep.
And I did a lot of these things for myself before trying to do it as a business for someone else.
Yeah.
So there are definitely still days where I say to myself, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And I can't believe people are paying me to do this. But I think every business owner experiences that at some point.
Oh, absolutely. So when Morningstar took off, what ended up happening with your blog during that time?
Okay, so my blog took a back seat.
Yeah.
So it went from, kind of being very sporadic to really a year and a half of solid focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Morningstar started, I had to put it on the back burner because I couldn't focus on starting a brand new business and still managing the blog consistently. So I put it on the back burner for about a year. Did a few blog posts during that year, but really minimally. Mm-hmm. And then kind of back to the beginning of 2018, I realized, okay, writing, reaching women, supporting women who are, Christian women who are in some sort of ministry or leadership role was still on my heart. It was still a passion, and it had been for many years. And that was the point where I realized I wanted to start a podcast because the podcast could be a way to still reach these women, still have content on the blog, and do something that I thought would be really fun too. Mm-hmm. So that was when I talked to you. Yeah. I said, hey, do you want to start a podcast?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew really what you were saying yes to at that point.
I didn't. But I'm super glad I said yes.
Yeah. And so, we started the podcast in July of 2018. So now the blog is mostly made up of the podcast content.
Yep.
But there still are I do still do some some blog writing here and there.
Yep.
And it's still on my heart to do more writing as well. And hopefully that'll be something that'll continue in the future.
So it sounds like not only has your business life sort of evolved over time, but your blog itself has evolved with you over time. So can you talk about your transition from talking about your boss who stole your pizza to figuring out what the purpose of your blog was going to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that in the beginning, my blog was just a hobby. It was just a way to kind of keep friends and family updated. And back in the day of 2006, 2005, 2006, blogging was really just exploding, and everybody was starting blogs, and a lot of it was just friends and family updating and commenting. And I think, again, it was just a gradual evolution of once I focused on wellness with my wellness company, I started focusing on wellness on the blog. And so I was doing some writing about healthy, staying healthy, and about just exercise and eating right and things like that. And then I realized I really wanted to focus on Christian women being able to balance marriage, motherhood, and ministry. I think I mentioned that in episode 34. That was actually my tagline for a few years with the blog, because I felt like as a pastor's wife, it was very hard to keep all those things and hold them all in a way that felt good. And so that was my focus. And then when I went to, when I was like, okay, we're going to start the podcast, I realized we needed to get even more specific. And I wanted to focus more on leadership. And again, taking into account all of my experiences previously helped me to shape who I was going to be speaking to and who the podcast would reach. And therefore, I redesigned the blog to reflect that.
Yep.
At that point.
So would you say that focusing and sort of niching down in those areas has helped you sort of develop your own voice for the blog?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that, if you follow much about business, you will hear the term find your target market and niche down and choose who you're going to talk to. And you don't always know that from the very beginning.
Absolutely not.
And I think it just made sense. The way that it happened for me is that it happened in conjunction with the different business journeys I was on. Yeah. And then once I got to the point where, at the beginning of 2018, it was really clear to me that leadership and Christian women was just the place where I wanted to plant my stake in the ground, and focus. And that doesn't mean that's always going to be the focus in the future. Right. It's where I'm at right now, and it's hopefully going to be there for a while.
Right. So I think that as you progress through the blog, it was the same progression you were having in your business.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. So,
yeah.
During that whole business journey, and all the different sort of hats that you wore over the years, when did you actually feel like you were a business owner?
I think that during the time that I was doing the network marketing company with the wellness focus, I definitely treated it like a business to an extent, but I don't think that I fully felt like a real business owner until I started my own business from scratch. Like I wasn't using, with direct sales, the advantage of direct sales is that you really kind of get a business in a box. Like you get the products already created, you get the pricing already figured out, you get, here's the type of person you should be looking for. When you start your own business from scratch, you're basically having to come up with all of that out of thin air. And so when I started Morningstar, I think that's when it really became real. Like, okay, now I am truly figuring all of this out for myself. Yeah. And that's when it felt real.
Was that scary or exciting? Or both?
It was really exciting. I love change and I love new things. Yeah. And so it was exciting. It became a little bit more scary when things got kind of crazy and it actually grew faster than I expected it to. And so then I was kind of feeling stressed because of how much work I had. And then it was a little bit more like, oh, I kind of, wow, I'm in this.
Wow, I really do have a business.
I'm not going back. So, yeah.
So, as with most things in life, we don't generally get there all on our own. So, who have been the people that have been mentors to you throughout this entire journey, and maybe specifically talk about in each season?
Sure. Yeah, so when I, started with the scrapbooking company, my mentor was the person that had gotten me started with that, and her name is Sheila. And she actually, like I mentioned, had been my cheerleading coach in high school, so I already had a relationship with her, and I felt like she was a mentor for more than just business at that point. She was a mentor for me in marriage, in my faith, and with business. And she was about 10 years older than me, and so it was really a good gap for me to have someone to kind of look forward to. Okay, here, like raising your kids. Like she already had kids at that point, so I was able to see her kids grow up, and I was able to learn from her in terms of starting this business and being married and all of that. And then when I was in the network marketing company, Sheila was one of my mentors, but then there were a couple other people, but specifically a gal named Kendall was one of my just favorite people ever. Still is one of my favorite people ever. And she just was always very intentional about connecting with me, even though I wasn't like directly, I was on her team, but I wasn't super close to her. If you know much about network marketing, there's like kind of different ways to be in there. And so anyway, I was part of her team, but a little ways down. And she was just super genuine. She was never fake, and she was always truly invested in my success. Yeah. And so I saw the way that she put relationships and valued like what was going on in my life and not just what's going on in the business. Yeah. Like she actually cared about what was going on in my life. And so she was a great mentor. And then since I got started with Morningstar, and really before I started Morningstar, I encountered a woman named Julie Stoyan, and she runs this program called Create Your Laptop Life. And so I was introduced to her, and she has truly been a mentor through my whole business in terms of the online world. Right. She's just been amazing, and I've learned so much from her, and both business and life stuff. And I've definitely had some other mentors that are people that I listen to their podcasts or things, but they're not people that I have a personal relationship with. And all three of these people were ones that I actually had a relationship with on some level.
So throughout all of these different businesses and evolutions of each business, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Oh boy. I'll just pick a couple. So one, I think in the very beginning would be learning how to promote my business and myself without being super obnoxious. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So if you're in direct sales, or if you've been, most of us know someone who is in a direct sales company. And unfortunately, I think in the beginning, sometimes you're very, very passionate about the company and the products, but you don't know a lot about how to share it without being super, super annoying. And so I think over time I learned, but I definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so one of the challenges was probably just figuring that out and figuring out how to approach it and share something that you're passionate about, something that you care about, without driving all your friends away. Really. I mean, you don't want to do that. And I have a lot to say about that now. There may be a separate episode about that sometime, about how to use social media appropriately and how to share. But that was one of the challenges. Another challenge was learning to hear the word no and not take it personally. And I think that as a recovering people pleaser, I definitely, and for a long time, not even recovering, just a people pleaser, I really did not like it when someone said no to me, because I took it very personally. I took it as a rejection of me and not a rejection of the product or service I was sharing. And so that, again, was a learning process to get to the point where I could say, okay, cool, that's awesome, I appreciate you telling me, and not take offense to that. And thankfully, I learned a lot of that through the direct sales experience. And so now with my current business, I am totally fine with hearing the word no. I would rather somebody just tell me no and move on with my day than not know.
Exactly.
And then we kind of already talked about this, but my other challenge would probably have been really managing my time and my schedule. And being able to still have a family life and invest time in the things that are important to me, while still running a business effectively.
I think that's always a challenge, a never-ending one. But we learn as we go along what's going to work. So
absolutely.
So what are some of the wins that you've experienced throughout the years?
I would say I had some pretty fun experiences in direct sales, and one of them was hitting my first advancement in that scrapbooking company. I remember very clearly when I did that, and I got a bonus check, and it was just a really good feeling to know that, like, my hard work was giving this direct result. And it was different than in a traditional, 9-to-5 job where you kind of just do the work and you get the paycheck, and sometimes you get some accolades, but with direct sales, there are some different advantages that you don't get outside of that. So that was fun. Another one was in the wellness company. I really got to a point where I was providing consistent income. Every single month I could rely on that check. And that was definitely encouraging for me, and a win that I would say I hadn't gotten to experience in the other company. And so that was good. And finally, I think that when I started Morningstar, like I said, I really didn't know what to expect. And I set some financial goals in that first year, and I felt very much like they were completely out of reach. And but Julie, who was the mentor I mentioned, she had pushed me to set a more significant goal than my first very measly goal that I had set. And I ended up hitting that goal, and that was encouraging to know, okay, all right, I can do this. This is a real thing. It's a real business. It's not just a little side project that I'm doing.
So what is the biggest business lesson that you've learned over the years?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that business is really all about relationships. There's nothing that has been more powerful in my business than the relationships that I've developed over the years. And to be quite honest, the whole experience of starting Morningstar Media Services, and the reason that took off as quickly as it did, is because of the year and a half prior to that, I had invested a lot of time and energy in developing relationships with no agenda whatsoever. Just truly getting to know people, connecting with other business owners, connecting with people online and in person, but a lot of it was online. And from those relationships, when I started my new venture, I had already a built-in network of support that essentially propelled me forward.
Yeah.
And just in every other scenario, in a lot of in-person scenarios here locally in my area, and I've definitely been part of networking groups and other places where I've invested in relationships that have turned into future business. Again, and those relationships started without an agenda, without trying to say, okay, I'm going to get to know that person so that they'll give me business.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would probably be the biggest thing I've learned.
What would you say is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself through all of this?
Oh, she's throwing in an extra question. We didn't have that one planned. Oh my goodness. The biggest thing I've learned about myself, I think that I really learned, and I think I learned this at the end, when I decided to shift my focus to my blog. I started to really do a lot of digging into my personality and my skills and my passions and learning all about that. And I realized just how much of an impact that, the way you're wired, plays into how you do with a particular job or role or business. And so I think I learned, like, I am a huge introvert. Really, as an introvert, there are certain things that are very draining to me, and then there's certain things that are very, very fulfilling to me. And I learned how much of an impact that was making on my mental health and my overall well-being. And so being able to shift to doing something that was more in line with how God had already wired me really helped me to feel better about life, but also to just do something that where I could be making a bigger impact. And the end result was still helping people. Like, I still wanted to help people in every one of these different business ventures. The end result has been wanting to help people. It's just been a different vehicle that I've used to achieve that goal. And I don't know if I fully answered your question, but
no, you did. I'm gonna throw another one at you that's not on the books. How would you say that your confidence has changed over the years? Because I think that putting yourself out there to do any type of business takes confidence. And I don't know if you feel like you could have started Morningstar right from the beginning of your journey. So I'm interested in maybe the journey of your confidence throughout the years.
Yeah, that's a good question too. So I think absolutely you're right. I don't think that I ever envisioned as a child being a business owner. Like I said, I practiced that thing, but I think when I was practicing, I was more like practicing being a secretary.
Yeah.
Like, because that was what I saw that women typically did in that, back in the 80s, that was like, there was a lot of women secretaries.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever have like an entrepreneurial, like my family really didn't have a lot of entrepreneurs in it. So when I started that first company, I think it was just a step of like, okay, this is something that sounds fun. And then I think that my leaders and those mentors that I had built into me and helped me to grow in confidence. I learned public speaking because of those experiences. I learned, how to be an effective communicator in part due to some of those experiences. And so the more of that I developed, I think my confidence grew with that. But I've never really been someone that's been afraid to try new things.
Right.
So I think that's like that's a natural ingrained thing in me, that I'll try something and not be afraid of it. But I think one of the biggest experiences I had was at the beginning of 2017 when I started Morningstar. I joined a mastermind group and paid to be part of that group. And I remember Julie, again, saying something along the lines of, she was sharing a story of her own experience, but she essentially shared that she felt like God gave me this brain to use, and I would actually be doing a disservice if I didn't use what he's given me and put it out into the world. And that stuck with me and reminded me that what I had and the skills and the desires and the passions that I had, God had given them to me. And so to not use them and to be afraid and to hold back was actually not honoring to him.
Right.
So I think that gave me a boost of confidence to say, okay, just do it. Just try.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yep.
put myself out there. I'm going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that don't always work out, but to just go for it is going to be better in the long run than to keep hiding or pretending that I don't know stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Yep. I love that answer. Good job. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us about your business journey?
I think that really, I think a lot of times we look at someone that's at a certain point in their journey and we think, oh my goodness, like they just woke up one day like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it can be anything. It can be business. It can be authors. It can be speakers. It can be moms. Like all of us have people that we look at and we say, wow, how did that happen? They're so lucky, right?
Yeah.
And I detest that phrase. She's so lucky, because really none of it is luck. And it's a journey, and there's a lot of ups and downs, especially as a business owner. There are days when you are on the top of the world and everything is going really well. Mm-hmm. And then there are other days when you literally want to give up. You want to throw in the towel, and you want to throw your computer across the room, you know? So yeah, I would say it's definitely been a journey, and that there's times where God opens a door and then closes that door later on, or leads in a different way. And I think you have to be willing to follow his leading even when it doesn't make sense to you. And that you don't know everything right away or ever.
Yeah.
You're never going to have all the information that you need, and you're never going to have all the courage and the lack of fear.
Yeah.
There's always going to be risk, and you just have to be willing to take those steps one at a time as God leads. And then you need to be willing to always continue learning and growing and developing your skills. If you want, speaking specifically about business, if you want to continue to grow in business, then you need to just continue to learn and grow, and keep your mind open to what God might want to teach you and where he might lead you.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to end with a question that we ask all of our interviewees. So here on the podcast, we believe that leaders are learners. And so I am wondering, what are your favorite resources that you would recommend related to business that may have helped you along the way?
Okay. So it's really hard to boil this down to just one or two, so I am cheating and giving 5.
Yeah, definitely cheating.
Some of our interviewees have given 4 or 5, so I'm not the only one.
All right.
And you will find that most of these are podcasts, because again, I am a podcast addict, and that is really how I got started in the whole online business space. Is I started by listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. So I'm going to share my favorites related to business. These are business podcasts. Mm-hmm. So Online Marketing Made Easy by Amy Porterfield. Mm-hmm. She was probably the first person that I listened to, the first podcast I listened to, and I think the first person that I bought a course from. And I love her teaching style. And her podcast has gotten even better over the years. She does a lot more like behind the scenes and kind of real life stuff now, which I really like. Hearing her personal experiences.
Yeah.
I love the Story Brand podcast and the Story Brand book by Donald Miller. Also, I've learned a lot from that, and that whole framework it's really a marketing framework. And we've talked about that before on the podcast.
Yeah.
We talked about it with Abby Jo Bailey on her episode, and how she uses it actually for her church work that she does. I also love the Biz Chicks podcast by Natalie Ekdahl. And I like her podcast specifically because she talks a lot about higher level business strategies. And again, she's a mom, so I like her perspectives on managing time.
Yeah.
And she talks a lot more about that, like the mom side of life and the wife side, than some of these other ones do.
Yeah.
I also like the Business Boutique with Christy Wright. And I've really only listened to her maybe in the past 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
But she is a Christian, and so I like that podcast in particular does have a faith aspect to it, where these other ones don't really. And then finally, Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. And I love Pat. He is just such a great guy and down to earth. Again, he's a dad, and he provides a lot of great resources about building an online business. He's been very successful, but he's also just very relatable in the way that he talks and the way that he interviews.
Yep.
So I love that.
So, yeah, I love those answers. I listened to at least a couple of those, and I'm definitely a fan of the Business Boutique.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll put the links to all these in the show notes,
Yeah.
of course, so you guys can go and check those
Yeah.
out if you haven't listened before.
I would say that podcasts are one of our favorite ways to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
listen to more than I do.
I do. But it's fun because, I mean, I've gotten to meet, I know Natalie Ekdahl, and then I also was able to meet Pat Flynn. And it's cool when you meet someone that you've been listening to their podcast, because you feel like you already know them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you get a lot more, I think, than just reading a blog.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to sit and watch YouTube videos, so sorry for all you YouTubers out there.
I like YouTube videos, but I'm not subscribed to anyone
No.
specifically.
If I need, and I will mention this, if I need to learn a specific thing, how to do something, and it's a tech thing, I will definitely go to
yeah.
YouTube and look
Yeah.
that up. So I definitely have used, some resources on there
Yeah.
for learning some of the things I've learned, but definitely more
great
through
way to-
podcasts.
Yeah. It's a great way to learn things. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for talking to us about your journey. I think that I think it will help a lot of people and kind of give them perspective of their own journey too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
None of this happens overnight.
No.
I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just start really small, and you work your way and you build over time.
Definitely. So we always end with a fun question, and we have been together for the past couple of days, and Esther's family has been here having a little vacation. We've had lots of fun together as families. So I want to know, Esther, what was your favorite part of your family vacation here in Florida? Other than being with me all the time.
Right. Well, of course, being with Holly, number one. So my family went home yesterday, and we had such a good time, and it's really hard to choose just one thing. But
I know.
I'm going to choose. I'm
just
going to
gotta
choose
do it.
one. Okay. I'm not going to list the top 5.
Okay.
But we spent one day, and we went over to a place called Caladesi Island. We went to Honeymoon Island and then took a ferry across to this other island, and it was just so beautiful, and it was kind of remote. There were quite a few people on the beach, but like you could look down the beach and see just sand, white sand for ages.
Yeah.
And seeing my daughter just play in the sand and have so much fun with Holly's son, it was so much fun. And just relaxing, and we all got a pretty decent sunburn, unfortunately. We thought we were using good sunscreen, but apparently when you're in the direct sunlight all day, you need to reapply. But really, the best part about that was on the way back, the director, the captain of the ferry, asked us if we wanted to see a dolphin. And so he took us over, and he had seen a dolphin popping up, and so he took us over into the little bay area, and we saw it, but then it kind of wasn't coming back, right?
Yeah.
So we got off the boat, and we went over, our whole family and Holly's family went over onto the docks, and we started watching, and we started seeing it pop up. And it was probably more than one. We only saw one fin at a time, but we think there might have been more than one kind of popping up and down. And it was just really, really cool. We love nature, and we love, my daughter loves dolphins, so for her to get to see that in the wild, is different than at an aquarium. So that was really fun.
And
it was the highlight of the day.
I think at its closest, it was probably only like 15 to 20 feet away from us. I mean,
so
we were
close to
very
us.
close. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So.
Awesome. So Holly, well, what about you? I mean, I know that having me here with you is probably your favorite thing of the month. But
yes.
What was your favorite part of like the things that we did together as families?
So I was actually going to pick Caladesi Island too, because I really love just relaxing on the beach. And we just were able to do lots of fun things. We looked for shells. We played in the water. The kids got covered in sand.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was a lot of fun, and it was just relaxing. I think the thing that sort of like made my heart the happiest was seeing our kids play together, because they are best buds, and He hasn't had a whole lot of really close friendships here in Florida since we've been here. So it was really nice to be able to see him really be able to like tap into that close friendship and, play and not have to think about, how do I make this new friend sort of thing. He was able to just kind of fall back into their friendship and have a lot of fun.
They have so many words together. The two of them, my word, they don't stop talking. So
you think we can talk?
If our kids ever start a podcast, watch out.
You're gonna need a really good editor.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that was awesome. And thank you, Holly, for interviewing me. Yeah. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Different. We're going to have to do this a different time. I'm going to have to interview you. So.
Oh, dear.
So thank you guys for being here with us on this episode. And we hope you got something out of it. We hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about my story with business. And in our Facebook group, we would love to chat with you if you have questions about this particular episode or about business in general. Holly also has her own business, and so we would be happy to chat with you in our Facebook group. So go ahead and join that group so we can chat in there.
We love to hear your perspective on things. So
yeah, definitely. All right, thanks,
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Christian Women Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, come and join us in our private Facebook community. We would love to get to know you better so that we can make sure the podcast is providing what you need. Plus, you can share your questions and ideas, and you'll be surrounded by incredible Christian women leaders. To join the group, visit estherlittlefield.com/group. Now, don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.